Hello, I'm Tom Wilkinson, and welcome back to the Thinking in English Grammar podcast, a podcast for intermediate to advanced level English learners. I have lived in some of the biggest cities in the world, and I have also spent a lot of time in tiny villages and towns in the countryside. For me, the countryside is less expensive, less polluted, and less noisy than cities. At the same time, the countryside is also less convenient. Today, I want to compare living in urban areas and rural areas. In order to talk about this topic and similar topics, we need to understand and know how to use comparisons of inferiority. Let's practice this grammar and discuss where is better to live in today's episode. As always, I have made a study pack for this grammar episode and all other comparison episodes. Inside the study pack, you get 4 episodes, lots and lots of study activities. It's free for Patreon members, or you can buy it if you don't want to subscribe to Patreon. Here is today's grammar lesson. In the 2 most recent Thinking in English grammar episodes, I have looked at comparisons of equality and inequality and comparisons of superiority or comparative adjectives. These confusing names just relate to different types of comparison. If you want to say that 2 things are the same, have the same quality, you can use the form be as adjective as. I am as tall as him. If you want to say something has more of a quality or a greater quality, we can use the grammar adjective er or more adjective. But how about when we want to say the opposite? When we want to say something has less of something than another thing. This is when the comparative of inferiority is useful. The comparative of inferiority is used when you want to say that one thing or one person has less of a quality than another. This type of comparison shows that something is not as good, fast, expensive, bad, when compared to something else. The structure for comparisons of inferiority is less adjective than. And this is used with both short and long adjectives, but often it's more natural with long adjectives. My house is less expensive than hers. Less expensive means that my house costs less than hers. This book is less interesting than that one. Less interesting means that this book does not capture your attention as much as the other book. And this film is less exciting than the last one. So less exciting means the film does not have as much excitement. The comparative of inferiority is a way to say that something has less of a certain quality, which can be seen as a negative comparison. It often shows that something is worse or not as good as another thing. However, if that quality itself is negative, using this grammar means it is less of that bad quality, so maybe a little bit better. When it comes to choosing a place to live, people often find themselves deciding between the fast-paced excitement of city life and the peace of rural living. Each lifestyle has its own advantages and disadvantages. I have lived in some of the biggest cities in the world: London, Taipei in Taiwan, and Tokyo. I also grew up in a small town in the English countryside, and I now live in a small city in Fukushima, Japan. Today, I want to compare living in the city and in the countryside. Rural life is often less loud than urban life. The constant hum of traffic, construction, and crowds can make a city feel like it's never quiet. Rural areas are less noisy, with the sounds of nature, like birds or wind. If you enjoy peace and tranquility, rural life is much quieter and less disruptive than life in a bustling city. If I compare my life now with my life in Tokyo 3 or 4 years ago, living in Tokyo was less peaceful. I struggled to find a nice and calm place to spend my time. Similarly, rural areas are typically less polluted than urban areas. The air in urban areas is often filled with smog, fumes, and even industrial waste. It is less clean than the fresh air of the countryside. Living in the country allows you to breathe fresher air and enjoy a cleaner environment overall. One of the key factors that makes me enjoy living outside of big cities is that rural life is less expensive than living in the city. Rent or property prices in cities tend to be less affordable than in rural areas. I can find larger properties where I live now for the fraction of the price of my tiny apartment in Tokyo. I can save so much money and live a nicer quality of life because my house is less expensive. However, rural life is obviously less convenient than living in a major city. Cities have easy access to entertainment, restaurants and shops. When I lived in London or Tokyo, there was every type of restaurant possible, usually within walking distance of my apartment. There were movie theatres and massive parks and entertainment facilities and museums. Where I live now is much quieter. It's a less exciting place to live. For me, though, convenience is less important than finances. Many people find that rural life is less financially demanding. I, from personal experience, have found that supermarkets in the countryside are less expensive. Of course, they have less diverse products as well, but they are more affordable. My rent is less expensive as well, and in general, life outside of the city tends to be a bit cheaper. While rural areas do offer this kind of peaceful lifestyle, they do often provide fewer job opportunities than cities. The countryside is less dynamic than cities in terms of career opportunities, with industries, businesses, and startups offering a wider variety of roles in the major city. Rural life is often less diverse when it comes to these professional opportunities. There are not many jobs suitable for me where I live currently. Fortunately, I am a podcaster. But if I was less fortunate and thinking in English was less successful, I would probably have to find a job. And it would be easier to find a job in the city. It is much more challenging where I live currently now to find a high quality job. Therefore, for people who are seeking career growth or specialized work, rural life can be less rewarding. In terms of social activities, the countryside is usually less vibrant than cities. Cities are known for their nightlife, cultural events, festivals, and a variety of different entertainment options. In rural areas, the social scene can feel less exciting. Smaller communities mean fewer people to interact with and fewer activities. While life may be less eventful in the countryside, you can often still find unique opportunities or connections. One major disadvantage of rural life is the lack of public transportation. Compared to cities, public transport options in the countryside are less frequent and less convenient. Rural areas often have fewer buses, trains, and subways, making it harder to get around without a car. The countryside may have slower internet connections and fewer digital amenities, making it less technologically advanced than city living. City life generally provides access to better schools and higher quality healthcare. cities have more educational institutions and universities and specialized training facilities, offering a broader range of programs and activities. On the contrary, rural areas tend to have fewer educational opportunities, with schools being less well-resourced. Overall, for me, rural life tends to be less stressful, less expensive, and less polluted than living in the city. At the same time, I know that the city provides more opportunities, more excitement, and more convenience than rural areas. The choice between the two depends on what you value more. At the moment, I value peace, low costs, and my family. But maybe in the future, I will need to find a job if thinking in English is less successful. So here is today's final thought. Today I've introduced you all to comparisons of inferiority. We use this grammar when we want to say that one thing or person has less of a quality than another. After explaining how to form and use this type of comparative grammar, I tried to demonstrate the grammar through a discussion of city life and rural life. Now you have listened to this episode and grammar lesson, let's practice your English. Why not answer the following question in the comments using the grammar you have learned today? In your country, is living in the countryside less expensive than living in cities? I'll say it one more time. In your country, is living in the countryside less expensive than living in cities? Try to answer this question using the grammar, the comparatives of inferiority, less, adjective than, in the comments below. You can comment on Spotify, comment on YouTube if you listen there, on my website, or if you're a Patreon subscriber, you can comment on Patreon or on Discord as well. I'd encourage you all to subscribe to Patreon. You can access the study packs with all of the extra resources, including an exclusive episode on superlatives that is only for Patreon subscribers and study pack purchasers. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'll speak to you next time. Goodbye.